This Scarab Strongbox strategy I found is absolutely absurd. This strategy is similar to other really popular Strongbox strategies in that it leverages rare monsters to drop an absurd amount of Scarabs using the new idol system. Where the strategy differs, however, is in how the rare monsters are generated on your map. Generally speaking, a combination of Scarab of Adversaries, Scarab of Divinity, and Scarab of Nemesis are used to generate lots of rewarding rare monsters using this strategy. But my strategy is very different. In many mechanics, monsters have a sort of negative loot multiplier. Look at Legion, for example. It spawns a whole crapload of rares, but you really get that many rare kills worth of loot? Not really. It's because the rewards from those rare monsters are tied to the predetermined rewards by the Legion. Strongboxes are a mechanic where this does not apply. The monsters give the same amount of loot as normal monsters you would find on your maps. This leads me to leverage the Strongbox modifier. This box is guarded by 3 rare monsters. Using this allows us to spawn significantly more rare monsters per map than any other strategy I've seen. Using an ambush Scarab of Containment, a regular ambush Scarab, and the ambush map device, we're able to get around 35 to 40 Strongboxes on our map. We then manually roll every one of them until we get the 3 rare monsters mod. But don't worry, it is one of, if not the most common modifier. The weights are available online somewhere. When I looked, it was a very, very high number. And just by experience, half the time, maybe a little bit less than that, 30% of the time, the mod is already on the Strongbox in the first place. Otherwise, aside from maybe a few outliers, it'll only take you around 2 to 3 rerolls to get the modifier. Using this, you end up generating hundreds of rare monsters per map. And thus, on a per map basis, I believe this to be the strategy that generates by far the most amount of Scarabs in every map. That doesn't mean it will be the most profitable though, and that is something I have not determined. I have not tested it against other strategies, and I have not explicitly calculated how much div per hour I'm making. But I can tell you that using this strategy, I was able to go from around 0 divines in my bank to a mage blood in less than a day. This is with me investing around 7 to 9 divine orbs in each and every map, when you add in Scarab cost and the cost for the map item itself, as we're looking for a very specific modifier. You might think that this strategy is a bit risky then. Maybe on some maps you don't make profit. I have not had that experience. I've made profit on every single map I've done, and it's not really particularly close. Sometimes I make absurd amounts of profit. I've had maps where I've generated 7 glitterings and 5 containments in one map. But generally speaking, the small scraps you get are always good. On an average map, I would say I drop at least 40 regular ambush Scarabs and 40 regular harbinger Scarabs. But I've had maps where I've dropped 80 of each. I had to go back to town each time to depot them. It's absurd how many Scarabs you drop. The amount of discernments I drop, the amount of harbinger of warhordes, the amount of just tink Scarabs I drop. It really does just go absolutely insane. And if you've seen in these videos I'm showing you, I actually have many Scarabs filtered out because of inventory space. Especially because I'm carrying all of this currency to roll the Strongboxes. I don't really have the space necessary to pick them all up, even though ideally you'd like to 3-to-1 all of the Scarabs. Now, although I'm hyping the strategy up a lot, which I think it rightfully should be, there are many conditions, and it took me a lot of troubleshooting to get to this point. First of all, you will need a strong character. This will not work with a low budget and weak character. My character so far does around 13 million DPS with Power Siphon. I'm decently tanky considering the Scavenger Ascendancy, but I still feel a little bit weak in my maps. It takes me a while to clear certain mobs, especially if they're triple wisped, or if they have really bad modifiers, like crit resistant and blocks attacks. Nevertheless, I'm able to clear most maps fine, and most of my deaths come from volatile cores because fuck volatile cores. Next, I'll give a rundown of my idol setup. It's worth noting that this idol setup could be improved. For example, you could include the modifier on one of my big idols. All Strongboxes in this map are rare. This would save me a lot of time rolling Strongboxes and also inventory space. I would no longer have to carry around alchemy orbs or scouring orbs. There's also just more modifiers you can use with this setup, since you can use both the really good Strongbox modifiers and the regular really good explicit modifiers and Scarab modifiers. The sky's really the limit for this to scale into the late game. I think I haven't even really scratched the surface of what this can do. So here's my idols. I start with the big ones first. One thing to note is that we do need to make sure that we have enough explicit modifier to meet a certain breakpoint that I will talk about later when I talk about map rolling. But generally speaking, you could have lower numbers than I have on these idols. First things first is we need to make sure that we have Strongboxes opened in your maps have a chance to be openable again. We need as much of this as possible, and ideally we need it to be on every single big idol we have. It scales exponentially as a 1/x relation, meaning the more Strongbox open in your maps we have, the better it becomes. We also need increased effect of explicit modifier on your maps, whether that's from per explicit modifier or ideally from quality, as that will give you more on average on a tier 17 map. With those two mods in mind, we also need one more mod on our big idols. It is very important, and it can cause the price of our idols to go up really fast. And that is this 3 mod idol, which is very, very important to the strategy. I could have the 9% chance to be openable again, the explicit modifier per quality, and also Scarabs are more likely to be less common varieties. This is pretty necessary in a Scarab strategy, obviously. So these idols here are extraordinarily expensive for the most part. You can get some of these for 20, generally speaking, 20 to 30 divines. If you're willing to go for a bit of lower numbers, 10 to 15 maybe you can probably obtain some of them. But I would definitely make sure you're able to have them before you start this variant of the strategy because of how much investment you need to spend in each and every map. On our small idols, we have increased chance for an Arcanist Strongbox and just increased Scarabs. There aren't very many good mods for our small idols, and I would very much rather run another medium idol because the medium idols we use more chance for Harbinger and Ambush Scarabs. Harbinger and Ambush Scarabs have a lot of Scarabs that are valuable, mainly for Ambush. The regular ones and the Discernment ones are extremely valuable. And for Harbinger, the regular ones are very valuable, and so are the Warhorde ones. This allows us to get a lot of scraps in each of our maps, and we drop a shit ton of these Scarabs in each map. On our big idols, or 3x1 idols, sorry, these ones are very important. The strategy is basically made by these idols with the modifier rare monsters in your map have a percentage increased chance to drop Scarabs per modifier affecting them. This is insane, and it stacks up with the amount of modifiers we put on our monsters, allowing us to scale it to an insane degree. We also want explicit modifier on these idols. As you can see, things can get pretty out of control pretty fast when it comes to pricing. Another thing you'll notice here is that I do have currency items from Strongboxes are duplicated, so you have to kind of keep in mind that this is actually still a Strongbox strategy as well. We are dropping, generally speaking, a lot of items from our Strongboxes occasionally, especially if we decide to use Discernment instead of Wisps, which I would decide to use if I was weaker. Let's go to that right now, actually. The Scarabs we use for this strategy. We use Ambush of Containment, obviously, to get as many Strongboxes in our map as possible. This, of course, is an expensive Scarab. It is, generally speaking, over 1 Divine Orb. We use a Nemesis Scarab, which is of a small, pretty low cost to medium cost, to get more modifiers on our monsters. A regular Ambush Scarab, because more Strongboxes are good. Wisps, to both increase the quantity of loot dropped and the quality of loot dropped of our monsters, but also because it gives more monster modifiers to the monsters, at least if it works the way I think it does, which I would assume it does since Wisps do modify the monsters and it appears in the same window. We also use a 15% chance for Strongboxes to be openable again because obviously that is extremely good. We then use Ambush on our map device and Searing Exarch as the Embers are worth a lot more right now. Next, let's go into the real expensive part of the strategy, and that is map rolling. So, one key thing about this strategy is that it is extremely map efficient. What that means is you do maps slow as fuck, but you get a lot of loot in each and every map. This means that you are actually able to justify spending way more currency on each and every map. In a regular Strongbox strategy, you'll just run any map that has a good amount of more Scarab on it. You want to specifically fish for the mod we're fishing for, because you can't really justify spending that much currency on it. So let's just look at the maps we're running. We are running maps with specifically increased number of rare monsters, and rare monsters each have 2 additional modifiers. if you check, these are the same modifier. But not only that, we need to make sure that the more Scarabs is at least around 80% at a baseline, 90% at a baseline. I typically like to go over 100. If you want to buy these maps on trade, they cost around 5 divines, which is crazy, right? It sounds crazy until you also realize we chisel these maps with Maven chisels, and 4 Maven chisels used for 100% Scarabs is around 2 divines as well. So for just this one map item, it cost me 7 divine orbs. It sounds crazy. It sounds crazy. But when you're spending 30 minutes in a map, and lots of your time is used re-rolling the boxes, it is worth your while. You have to trust me on that one. It is necessary for the strategy to use the best maps possible. And speaking of that, if we go to our current, you can roll the maps yourself if you want to. It will just take a lot of Chaos Orb spamming. And ideally you would want to have a lot of maps in your bank so you can roll many at a time. And so you don't have to swap items all the time and check. Generally speaking, you would like to hold currency in your inventory while you're mapping to roll your boxes. Generally speaking, I kind of construct my inventory like this. You can hold more Chaos Orbs, less Chaos Orbs. Wisdom Scrolls are generally annoying as well, but you can roll, like I said, you can roll the mods pretty fast, right? And late game, if you look at my idols, there is the potential to get an idol mod called all Strongboxes in your map are at least rare, which will save me a lot of quality of life when I get it in the future. But first of all, I'm going to invest in a stronger build first. Well, yeah, that's my strategy. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you're going to play the strategy, or if you're just watching and you got to the end here, please roll maps for me and put them on trade. I'll buy them for 6 divines, I swear, please. But yeah, I hope you really enjoyed the video. I've never actually seen a Scarab strategy drop this many Scarabs before, and that kind of makes me pretty happy that I was able to discover this. It has some clunk to it, but I actually really enjoy it. I personally enjoy it significantly more than the regular Scarab farming strategy because your loot all drops in the same area. It's really a lot easier to loot. It's a lot more relaxing just walking through the map and not having to care about clearing as fast as you can. And it's just all around a really, really good time. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know. I'll be sure to answer them. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.